Good afternoon, everybody. We'll go ahead and get started for the first Vision Zero meeting under the legislation from this past General Assembly session. My name is Dr. Tim Kearns. I'm the director of MBA's Maryland Highway Safety Office and Maryland Vision Zero coordinator. But before I pass it along to Administrator Nizer to get the meeting kicked off, I will go through some housekeeping, since this is the first time that we've gone live with one of our update meetings. The meeting this afternoon is being recorded. You probably should have gotten an announcement beforehand, but everything will be recorded. There for at least the next 5 years. This meeting will be conducted via town hall format using Microsoft Teams. If you're joining virtually, you can't unmute, but we do welcome you to write your questions in the Q&A box online. You can also, chat amongst yourselves using that same feature. We'll monitor the questions, and we will attempt to answer the ones that we received in the time frame that we have allotted for today. If we can't get to every question, we will do our best to get back to you afterwards with a response. So we may not be able to answer all the questions during the meeting. But right now, I'll turn it along to Administrator Nizer to get us started.
Great, thank you, Tim. Good afternoon, everybody. I really appreciate everybody taking time out of their busy schedules, as well as your dedication into preventing loss of lives on our roadways. We also want to thank everybody who joined us virtually for this first meeting. We certainly appreciate your participation as well. And we know that MDOT alone cannot achieve our goal of Vision Zero without the support of all the advocates and the larger community and working together to get there. And so thank you for being here. We'll start off this afternoon just by making introductions. So again, my name is Chrissy Nizer. I am the administrator of the Motor Vehicle Administration and Governor Moore's Highway Safety.
Good afternoon, Samantha Biddle, Deputy Secretary, MDOT.
Good afternoon, Bruce Gardner, Executive Director of Maryland Transportation Authority.
Good afternoon, Cynthia Spriggs with MBA's Highway Safety Office, the Pedestrian Bicycle Speed Aggressive Manager.
Hello, I'm Mark Wall. I am the Program Manager for Occupant Protection and Distracted Driving at the Maryland Highway Safety Office.
Good afternoon, Cliff Jacobs, Impaired Driving Prevention Program Manager, MBA's Highway Safety Office.
Tim Richards, Section Manager, Maryland Highway Safety Office.
Doug Mowbray, Traffic Records Program Manager for the Maryland Highway Safety Office.
Good afternoon, Todd Lang, Director of Transportation Planning, the Baltimore Metropolitan Council.
Good afternoon, Cedric Ward, Director of the Office of Traffic Safety for Maryland State Highway Administration.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Will Pine, State Highway Administrator.
Again, Tim Kearns, MHSI Director and Vision Zero Coordinator.
Joe McAndrew, Assistant Secretary at Maryland Department of Transportation.
Safety Office. Michael Lehman, Deputy Director, Highway Safety Office. Anna Lewandowski, Communications and Media Section Manager, Highway Safety Office.
Oh, hi. Jonathan Rogers, PSO Policy Advisor.
Thank you, everybody. We'll go ahead and get started. As I mentioned earlier, this is the first Vision Zero public meeting under the requirements of Senate Bill 345, which went into effect October 1st of this year. And the purpose of the meeting is to gather input from stakeholders and to identify areas for road safety improvement and discuss ongoing initiatives. Our first meeting today, we're going to kind of paint the broad picture of highway safety in Maryland. The goal of Vision Zero is to bring Maryland's fatalities and serious injuries down to zero by 2030. But we have a lot of work to do to get there. So we want to make sure that everybody kind of has a flavor of all the highway safety programs that we have underway. We'll identify strategies that we have in place currently to help us get to zero fatalities and serious injuries on Maryland roadways. We'll also have this opportunity to analyze the fatality infrastructure reviews that were required through legislation a year or two ago. Those were completed by the State Highway Administration. We also want to provide guidance to the administration on other issues directly related to roadway safety and to advise the governor and state and local agencies on policies and programs and services that affect everybody that are using Maryland's roadways. We do have a full agenda today because we are covering all the topics on the Strategic Highway Safety Plan. We have updates from the Maryland Highway Safety Office. We will cover several infrastructure reviews and perspective on local strategic or roadway safety plans that we have across the state. We do have time at the end for roundtable discussion and public questions and comments, so we're going to try to keep some of that time available. So if you do have questions as we go through, please go ahead and enter them online in the Q&A box. Those joining us virtually can write questions and comments. Any suggestions, you can go ahead and put them in the chat box that will help us to get to our ultimate goal. Please remain respectful. In efforts. And just to kick it off with a review of the 21 to 25 Strategic Highway Safety Plan, which is the one we're operating under now, we're going to take a few minutes to go over some of our emphasis areas. But I do want to mention that in 2023, Maryland had 621 fatalities on our roadways. Obviously, that number is unacceptable with our goal. Anything more than 0 is unacceptable. Even one person that doesn't make it home is unacceptable to everybody we have in the room. A little bit of good news is that currently this year we are on a pace to have 40 fewer fatalities than we did in 23. So that is 40 folks who will make it home and back to their families and loved ones. So as long as we keep driving those numbers down, that's the direction we want to head. But we do want to get it started by talking about some of our emphasis areas and the programs that we have in place, and we will start with Cynthia Spriggs and speed and aggressive driving.
Good afternoon, everybody. Again, Cynthia Spriggs, pedestrian bicycle speed aggressive. I'm going to start with the speed and aggressive programs and then move into the pedestrian and bicycle. Sorry. Are you moving? You got it. Okay. All right. Apologize for that. A little technical difficulty here. So the speed EAT, I was very happy to welcome Officer Wright from the Mount Airy Police Department this year as the co-chair. Since I've had this for about 2 years, I have not had a co-chair, so this is a great way to broaden the EAT. We have about 100 members. We are doing our meetings hybrid. We were, obviously, after the pandemic, all virtual. We've been doing it hybrid. I've balanced a lot of things that I've learned from the pedestrian and bicycle emphasis area into speed. One of those is trying to alternate between the DC and Baltimore regions in person so that we're making sure that we're restrictions in fulfilling. And as Dr. Kearns was saying, our numbers are still way too high. You can see we have this increase in speed and aggressive related fatalities and injuries that we still have a lot of work to do. We know that it is a multidisciplinary approach. Enforcement is a big component of this. While nationally, locally, state enforcement is down, our officers are still out there. We do provide grant funding out to officers. They're working these special duties, but we know that there is a decline in the citations. And with that, as a state, we have seen the automated enforcement programs rise pretty significantly. We started out with work zone in school over a decade ago, and now we've seen robust residential programs that have been longstanding for a while, as well as continuing to be put into legislation each year. Crash Corps, one of our grant funded and partners in the highway safety field, has been studying the automated enforcement, and I can provide more information if that's requested. And again, multidisciplinary approach. It takes engineering and infrastructure changes as well. Our partners at the State Highway Administration, as well as our local engineers and Department of Work. Speed limit reductions, context zones, and looking at the road as a use for all. And the slower the speeds are, the safer it is for everybody. I know we'll go into this a little bit more, but the MDOT Complete Streets, all modes have signed on, and we're really working to make sure that that is implemented in all aspects. And just a little note, this is from one of the quick builds in Hagerstown, where we had the speed cushions and the speeds decreased. So positive signs that the complete streets will work. Legislation, we, again, taking some of what I've learned from PBEAT, we've worked with some subcommittee to talk about legislation that's going on. We've had PBEAT advocates come to join the speed advocates and others who have the interest, which really helps share knowledge of the way that things proceed in Annapolis, shared thoughts, as we all know, whether it's speed, pedestrian, bicycle, impaired, distracted, they're all related to save lives. Our campaigns for speed and aggressive, we use multiple disciplines as well, from the sports arena to Twitch, which is the online gaming systems, to social media, as well as as well as the Ravens and so forth in sports, to go forward to spread that message. And to turn kind of the gears towards pedestrian and bicycle, this is the larger of the two EATs that I run. This is co-chaired with State Highway Administration and a local Department of Public Works. We have about 120 members. We did take the meetings after the pandemic. Make sure we are doing that fairness, that everybody could join into the meetings. So we did make the decision to go back to hybrid. We are still seeing the increased number in person, which is excellent, because we know that that collaboration really helps. But we also know that those who are joining in are able to get a lot of that really important information. And we do switch these meetings between the Baltimore and the DC regions. The pedestrian fatalities, unfortunately, last year was a devastating year for non-motorists, and that's the same with injury as well. We have a lot of work to do in this. Our bicycle fatalities are a little bit more on the kind of ebb and flow, but that's still way too many. And the same thing with the injuries. They were kind of steadily going down, then there's an increase. We need to really make sure, again, focusing on some of that crash care, making sure that we really get everyone where they need to be. On the enforcement side, we work very well with our law enforcement partners. Again, that grant funding that we provide to them. They conduct, these are what are called pedestrian enforcement, where they have officers that do radar as well as crosswalk enforcements to drivers, to really push that message that our drivers need to be aware of our vulnerable road users. And then as well, we assist also with training. Baltimore County Police Department hosts training for officers. It's not just for their officers, it is for officers around the region. This is a snapshot from Howard County's police department. They have recently started to join in the trainings. Jurisdiction. And the other picture is Baltimore County conducting theirs. You can see officer with high visibility jacket on, and the car is just going right through. Infrastructure, again, that partnership is huge. We've got to work together, but it's not only when they change it, it's also with us helping to educate and kind of combining all projects together. These are just a handful of the things, and I know Administrator Pines will talk a little bit more about PSAP and dive into that, but this is some of the countermeasures that State Highway is looking at. And through our pedestrian and bicycle NHTSA assessment, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration assessment, one of them was to make sure we completed that complete streets policy, which we were able to do, and all the modes sign on. And in our emphasis area tracker is to also just identify those priority projects, which PSAP has really taken the lead with that and have had the top 5 last year. We've had about 8 meetings now, which is great, public meetings. And then also just doing like in or outside of the car. Legislation, we started to meet as a PBEAT subcommittee, and then we had members of the Maryland Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee all together. So this was a kind of easier transition. The Maryland Bicycle Advisory Commission, otherwise known as the committee, otherwise known as MBPAC, they have now a subcommittee in that. So we have our PBEAT members along with MBPAC, which is great because that's again that way of sharing all of those ideas, seeing what is going on, really looking at other states and finding out those. And then again, that comes with, again, that collaboration, that multidisciplinary. It's not just those in state and local government, but advocates. And advocates were down in Annapolis and were able to pass the very, very, very important bill, HB 337, in memory of Sarah Camp Landing Camp. We're talking about the Read Across America that we did with Cheswick the Crab. Cheswick the Crab is was our ocean city, is still our ocean city, but kind of has moved across the bay. We were talking about Read Across America and how we're taking Cheswick out to communities. And one of the members of PBEAT, who also happened to be a state highway administration employee, said, I have an excellent community group that this would be wonderful to take Cheswick. So we partnered up. That bottom left corner is at the Nepalese American Society in Baltimore County, and we had a great group with a lot of participation. The middle picture is Cheswick in the classroom. That was Walk to School Day this year down in Prince George's County. The picture of all of the kids outside with some of the bikes, that was from the morning walk to the school. That top portion with the high school, that's Central High School, that was a walk audit. That was with grant funded partners, but there were other partners that were in there to get that walk audit partnership going. So you get all of those views from what we're seeing as we walk. And with that, there's multiple campaigns, but they all have that same message. We need to slow down. We need to watch out for each other. We need to keep our eyes open. And so we have in the Baltimore region with our partners at Baltimore Metropolitan Council, we have a signal woman. She keeps things kind of light and hearty, but she also makes sure everybody knows this is a serious topic. And then we just unveiled our new Washington region through the Washington Council of Governments, our Street Smart, where it's Lives Ahead. And so that is where it's those life events, life ahead, those life events that, you know, those are important moments we want to have everybody see. Our Cheswick the Crab, always present down in Ocean City during those busy summer months when Ocean City becomes the top spot in Maryland. And then, of course, the statewide be the driver that saves lives. I will pass it to Cliff.
Thanks, Cynthia. Before we move on to Impaired and Cliff, I'll back up just a little bit and explain some of the nomenclature you might hear us toss around a lot. We're all very used to it. So when we say things like SHSP and everybody doesn't know what they mean. So the Strategic Highway Safety Plan is what really ties everything together. A lot of the programs, in fact, almost all of the programs that we work on for highway safety are guided by United States Department of Transportation. So the Federal Highway Administration and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration both provide guidance to states about how we can put our programs. Strategic Highway Safety Plan, or as you'll hear, the SHSP, is the overall guiding document that we put together every 5 years that is kind of the umbrella for all highway safety programs that we put together, both on the state highway side and the behavior side from the Highway Safety Office. Everything is kind of covered under that. So if we want to have strategies or action steps to address fatalities and serious injuries on our roadways, we have to include them in the Strategic Highway Safety Plan. So it's really our global document. The one that we are currently operating under now expires at the end of next year. And we'll talk a little bit more about this at the end of the meeting. We will be redeveloping the SHSP for 26 to 2030. So everything you hear about today has been identified using our data. Everything that we do is used some type of highway safety data to identify the problems and to try to evaluate our programs. So the programs you hear about today, speed, pedestrians, occupant protection, and impairment, account for more than 60% of fatalities in the state. So those are identified as our largest programs that we want to address when we're trying to drive down injuries and fatalities. And so that's kind of how we get to the
Thank you. I'm Cliff Jacobs, everyone, and we're going to give a brief snapshot over the impaired driving emphasis area update. First and foremost, with this impaired driving strategy, I serve as the co-chair, and the initiative is chaired by Kurt Erickson, who is the president of the Washington Regional Alcohol Program. And we have some key bullets here that emphasize our EAT strategies. As Dr. Kearns talked about, first and foremost, we take a data approach, and with that, we just go down the line where we focus on enforcement, educating the community, engineering and technology, which is so key when we're talking about the impaired driver, then infrastructure, and we finish up with legislation. What two key roles are in our state that drive us to help putting legislation on the board to make our roadways safer? If you can just take a moment and look at this, this is a Maryland DUI arrest snapshot from the years of 2018 through 2023. Not going to go too much into this, but I want you to take a look at it because it shows the work that we still must do. In my emphasis area, which is impaired driving, this is a crime in the criminal justice system that is 100% preventable. So you take a look at these numbers and what they represent. They represent Marylanders from all over the state, and it should be zero because there's so much technology. There's ride shares out there, accountability measures, where an individual does not have to get behind that wheel after consuming an impairing substance. Some more points for you to think at and just digest. We break it down into two strategies. We have alcohol impaired and we have drug impaired. The reason is we know it's polysubstance use on our roadways. And if someone is just only giving a court order not to consume alcohol, in there. Once again, you're looking at the numbers and injuries and fatalities. There's work and more work that we must continue to do. Enforcement, as my colleague Cynthia talked about, this is huge. We like to focus on our high impact times of the year. First and foremost, we do St. Patty's Day, Cinco de Mayo, July 4th, where every July 4th, we're working with Maryland State Police to get out there and do our statewide Spider Initiative, which is a team of dedicated Maryland State troopers that focus strictly on removing impaired drivers from our roadways. These troopers use their data to focus on high areas such as the 695 Beltway and also 495 Beltway within the Prince George's area. National mobilization, national night out every August, working with community partners, engaging in education. Train, train, train. We must continue to train our officers that are often our first line of defense when it comes to the impaired driver. Drug recognition experts, our DREs that are trained law enforcement professionals that are able to recognize the signs of impairment other than alcohol at roadside. A-ride training, which is huge as well, another training component which gives these officers the decision to make an arrest and remove that individual from roadside. And then expanding our partners, working with GHSA and responsibility.org to have a pot of non-federal government money where we can do training opportunities such as green labs, which are cannabis impairment intoxication training for law enforcement officers where they can recognize the signs of cannabis impairment and methods of consumption. If you see right, patient. Right now, what we have in Maryland, we have 196 officers that are in this program. And for calendar year 23, there were 674 DRE evaluations conducted. Few examples of what I can show you right here. If you look in the upper left-hand corner, that officer is administering an oral fluid testing device to a participant who has recently participated in the cannabis impairment lab. Once again, equipping these officers with the tools so they can make that life-saving decision roadside. A few key recommendations from our impaired driving assessment that was completed on August of 2023. First and foremost, it was to hire a state judicial outreach liaison. That is an active or retired judge. That is the liaison between the Highway Safety Office and the judiciary. We've completed that. As of August of this year, Honorable Barbara Waxman is the State of Maryland Judicial Outreach Liaison. We also were tasked with dedicating an impaired driving strategic plan, which we've completed as well. And next is hiring a traffic safety resource prosecutor, which is on the same plane as the SJOL, except the TSRP is that education component for our prosecutors and our state's attorneys. One thing that's proud to announce is the needle is moving on that TSRP, and we hope to have that filled within the next several months. Community engagement is very big, especially when we talk about impaired driving, because all of our communities throughout Maryland have been impacted by it. A few key methods we live by is public awareness and education, but we also have to extend our outreach to a population that might not be privy to the services that we offer. So one of our successes this calendar year has been our HBCU outreach and developing our community engagement amongst Greek life at our historically Black colleges and universities here in Maryland. Some of our Be the Driver methods. One of the things that's going to touch on with this as well is bringing in to a Greek life. We've worked with the students at Bowie State University to get them to buy into our message and get their feedback and go live with reading our scripts. And we plan to have members of Greek fraternities as well as athletic student athletes as well. Our GHSA grant opportunity, we were awarded $20,000 for a Lyft grant to encourage sober ride. Chose to focus this initiative on Prince George's County and target bars and liquor stores where, based on data, we saw impaired driving crashes happen within a 10-15 mile radius of these establishments. Two things I do want to highlight. Within this previous grant cycle of 2023, we trained 232 law enforcement officers through ARIDE. That's 12 more than what we wrote in our grant announcement. We conducted 13 green labs. We initially wrote to conduct 8. And what we did was, I don't want to use the term think outside the box, but we brought the community together. And on November 1st, we conducted a green lab for law enforcement personnel of historically Black colleges and universities. Engineering and technology, we see the ignition interlock device as well as the SOTOXA oral fluid testing device. One thing that was a win for the state of Maryland, effective October 1, 2014, we had Noah's Law, but for so many years we were trying to close. Now, is arrested and convicted of an impaired driving charge will have to have an interlock placed on their vehicle. Toxicology, this past spring, we held a toxicology stakeholders meeting. A few key overview takeaways that you see right here. Just want to touch on that last bullet point, expediting impaired driving evidence, oral fluid, I showed you that information, e-warrants, and a law enforcement providing the program. Our multidisciplinary task force, composed of disciplines that have immediate contact with the impaired driving population, always speaking to expand this task force. Here are a few of the disciplines. And a picture is worth 1,000 words. Every slide I showed and you see this outcome right here, that's why there's a call of action to revamp our task force, to reach certain pockets of our state, to bring everyone together, because that picture does not have to happen. And legislation, continuing to develop impaired driving countermeasures and being awarded grants in order to stop individuals who are under the influence from operating vehicles. Our TSRP and our SJOL, their training objectives, they will be throughout our state, training the judiciary as well as prosecutors and evidence-based research on impaired driving. And that's my information. If there's any questions about the impaired driving EAT and the necessary.
Thank you, Cliff. I'm going to hop in again real quick. Cliff mentioned the green labs that if you're not familiar with what a green lab is, it's an opportunity for law enforcement to provide training to other law enforcement agencies. We're very fortunate in Maryland that we have one of the premier trainers for cannabis use in Montgomery County, that they've been able to offer these classes not just in Montgomery County, but also through the Chesapeake Region Safety Council, as well as Ocean City Police. But what happens in these labs is that they will recruit cannabis users. Usually they're on medical marijuana, and they will come in for an evening. They're provided a ride to and from the facility, but they'll come in for an evening and they will consume a certain amount of cannabis. Usually it's through smoking, and then they will have the law enforcement that are there for the training. They will be able to do the roadside tests and to be able to use the Sotoxa machines to see what the level of THC is in their system, and to see how marijuana does affect their reaction time, how it affects their behavior, and how it affects their actions. So it's an excellent opportunity to train other law enforcement officers for something that they are seeing more and more of out in the field now when they're making traffic stops with folks that are impaired. The other thing that we noticed through these is that the combination of cannabis and alcohol is kind of doubles up on the effects it has on a person. So seeing more of that, it really helps officers to be able to identify those situations. We'll move on to occupant protection. Mark.
Great, thanks a lot, Tim. As you said, Mark Wall, distracted driving, occupant protection program manager. Occupant protection is about seatbelts and car seats and all seating positions, and distracted driving we'll jump into right here. So distracted driving in 2023, there were over 50,000 distracted driving related crashes. And out of those crashes, we had over 20,000 people injured. Basically 5% of the state's overall fatalities. So if we could just eliminate this distracted driving behavior, it will really drive down our numbers to get towards that 0 fatalities. And if you look at the injuries, distracted driving played 50% of the state's overall injuries as it relates to crash. So what we've identified is that there are 4 different types of distracted driving. We're trying to make sure that the public understand that distracted driving is more than just talking on the cell phone. We've identified the visual distractions, looking at something other than the road, auditory, listening to something, not relevant to driving, manual, manipulating something. That's becoming more important with the infotainment systems and technology and vehicles now, and cognitive, just thinking about something other than the primary task of driving. So just making sure folks understand those. And of course, the big one, cell phones, letting people know, send it, the average person sending or receiving a text message, it takes 5 seconds to do that. If you're driving 55 miles an hour, you can cover the length of a football field. And we know now people are driving even faster than 50. So Maryland's law actually states that an individual may not use a text messaging device to write, send, or read a text message or electronic message while operating a motor vehicle in the travel portion of the roadway. The fine for that is $83. It's on an escalating scale, so it's $83 for that first offense, $140 for the second, and it goes up to $160. Now, if use of that device contributes to a crash, that fine may increase. Example of that would be here we have with Jake's Law. If you look at that top right picture, that's Jake Owen, the picture of the 5-year-old who was riding in the vehicle with his parents when somebody using their cell phone crashed into the back. And unfortunately, Jake lost his life. So now that we have Jake's law, drivers who cause a serious injury or death while on the cell phone may receive up to 1 year in prison and up to a $5,000 fine. So moving on to buckling up occupant protection with seatbelts. In Maryland, our law requires the use of seatbelts by all passengers in all seats. So you're not supposed to operate a motor vehicle unless everyone in the vehicle is restrained by a seatbelt or a child safety seat. That fine is also $83. So currently right now, what you'll see in the green is Maryland's current seatbelt rate, which is 90.6. So it's about 10% of Marylanders who just don't wear their seatbelt. And yearly we do a seatbelt survey. And so some of the data that we found out from that seatbelt survey, the seatbelt rate is a little higher with cars and SUVs at 91.7, but then it's a big drop off of 82% of drivers who wear their seatbelt in pickup trucks. So we're having a difficult time getting truck drivers to put on that seatbelt. So that's definitely something that we're going to focus on moving into the new year. But when you look at the overall fatalities, and if you see the number 74 under that, that was unknown. So in a crash report, the officer or first responder wasn't able to identify if that person had a seatbelt on or not. So if you add that 74 to the 115, it's a large number of people who are losing their lives just for not using that seatbelt. So if we can get 100% seatbelt usage, that number would significantly decrease as well. Same thing with the injuries. If you count the unknowns, it's over 5,569 injuries when it comes to not wearing your seatbelt. And serious injuries, and these are more serious life-changing injuries like broken necks and real critical injuries, 386 injuries related to people not wearing their seatbelts and being involved in a crash. One of the things we try to focus on with our campaigns and targeting, our messaging and outreach is times of buckled up. So this right here is data collected from the seatbelt survey where if the driver was buckled up, 94% of the time the passenger was buckled up. And if the driver was unbuckled, only 42% of the time was the passenger buckled. So it's really important to focus in on those drivers and get those drivers to buckle up. We have a huge click of the ticket campaign that we ran May 15th through June 4th, where we had audio, social, video, digital displays, and billboard tactics, just trying to educate people about seatbelt safety and drive that traffic to the seatbelts page on the Zero Deaths website. We've also had a partnership with the Baltimore Orioles where we were able to get a lot of messaging out at the ballpark and at games. Some of the performance from the, it was an $86,000 investment. We made over 20 million impressions, over 15,000 clicks to the Zero Deaths website, and we had a number of social media impressions as well as YouTube impressions and billboards across the state. That's all we have for occupant protection, directed driving. Any questions, let me know.
Okay, just a couple things also. From Mark's presentation, he mentioned that 115 people were known not to be wearing their seatbelts that were killed. Seatbelt use is about 45 to 50% effective. So had everybody been wearing their seatbelts, that's 50 to 60 people that would still be alive today just by making that click sound when you get in the car. So the other thing I wanted to mention, you saw that the distracted numbers that he showed at the beginning of his section were really pretty high. Distraction is very difficult to identify when we use a crash report for a lot of our data, and a lot of the way we identify problems are using what's on the crash report. It's not using a cell phone or using a handheld device. That's actually a very small portion of what's recorded on the crash report. So when you see that number, it accounts for a lot of things, not just somebody holding their cell phone. It's somebody that is, actively not paying attention to the roadway, whether they're distracted by, food or drink in the vehicle, other people in the vehicle, or, actually using a cell phone or a handheld device. So there's lots of things that fall in that category. But you can see by how many are coded that way that does play a large role in crashes in the state. Our next presentation is we want to make sure everybody has an update on what State Highway is doing with their pedestrian safety programs and complete streets.
All right, again,
You're up.
good afternoon, everyone. Infrastructure. An exciting advancement is that every MDOT mode signed the Complete Streets Policy Update in June of 2024. This update expands and enhances SHA's 2012 policy. This was talked about a little bit earlier in the pedestrian safety presentation, but I hit it again. And the Complete Streets implementation, the approach will be implemented in all phases of project development. We're currently in the process of updating applicable guidance, standards, and documentation to align with the policy, and this includes actively developing the implementation plan and waiver process. Currently, stakeholder education on the policy updates is ongoing, with modal implementation plans going into effect in January. And related to the Complete Streets rollout, we also partnered with Smart Growth America and local jurisdictions to deploy the Complete Streets demonstration projects on state-owned roadways as part of the Complete Streets Leadership Academy. The lessons learned from those Academy pilot projects will inform future collaboration with communities, help us have safety interventions that also align well with the MDOT Complete Streets policy. We deployed context-driven proven safety countermeasures on state roads in Bel Air, Hagerstown, and Howard County. And beyond the Complete Streets updates, we're also advancing corridor safety projects to address our pedestrian safety action plan. The PSAP is designed to address the 23 most dangerous corridors statewide. And the projects within the program are safety-focused projects to ensure that they remain Highway Safety Improvement Program funding eligible, or what we often shorten to HSIP funding. As Dr. Kern said, we like our acronyms around here. This means that these are not streetscape or other widening projects that aren't directly safety-focused. This also allows us to implement these safety enhancements more quickly to minimize impacts and bring the benefits, the safety benefits to the public sooner. As was mentioned, we've been out doing public engagement on those PSAP projects. We currently have 5 PSAP projects fully funded with HSIP funds in our 6-year CTP. And we expect to implement the first PSAP project on Maryland 650 in Prince George's and Montgomery counties. We're also doing planning and concept work on the next round of PSAP projects. And for example, we have our next public meeting for a PSAP project for Maryland 214 corridor in Prince George's County at 5 p.m. on Tuesday, December 10th at Central High School in Capitol Heights, Maryland. So please, beyond this meeting, come out and join us again if you'd like to learn more about the PSAP projects going into action. As was mentioned, I also want to thank the Maryland Highway Safety Office for participating in the PSAP meetings, because we're using that outreach opportunity to boost educational components beyond the engineering discussions related to the PSAP projects. And finally, Dr. Kearns mentioned the Strategic Highway Safety Plan. With this plan, embedded in it is the Vulnerable Road User Report, or the VRU corridors. The report identifies 110 of the most dangerous corridors statewide. And SHA worked with Federal Highway to gain approval to use program management services for full delivery of safety spot improvement projects on these corridors. The projects are HSIP eligible, but again, they differ from projects are spot improvement focused, and PSAP is more of a corridor wide investment. We have those first 6 VRU projects also underway in addition to this PSAP program. So that wraps it up on my thoughts on PSAP and Complete Streets.
Thank you. We're going to move on to another part of the legislation that specified that we take a look at the fatality infrastructure reviews that will require under legislation. So for the first meeting, so this is our, as I said at the beginning, this is our first Vision Zero meeting where we're going through the whole process and trying to get our feet wet a little bit. So we're taking this opportunity to, first of all, go over the process. Cedric Ward with the SHA will review how the fatality infrastructure reviews are conducted, And then we have 4 reviews who have completed the process over the last month and a half since October 1st that we'll be able to go over the crashes in depth and kind of show how these reviews are used to improve our safety programs.
Thank you, Dr. Kearns. Again, Cedric Ward, State Highway Administration. So the fatality infrastructure reviews, this law was passed about 2 years ago. And so we have about 18 months of action regarding doing these in-depth reviews. So I just have a few slides today to kind of give you a look of what the process looks like. And it should answer all those questions, the what, when, who, how we do it. Down. All right. So just a little roadmap, go over what is a fatality infrastructure review. As Will mentioned, we like our acronym, so FIR for us, SHA's process. And with this, I should also acknowledge that MDTA, we did collaborate with MDTA in developing this process on their facility. And then just considerations that we use when conducting these reviews. So what is a fatality infrastructure review? Short and sweet, it is the physical site inspection of the fatal crash location. This specifically focuses on fatal crashes for vulnerable road users. Typically, we go out there as close as possible to the event of a fatal crash. We want to capture the conditions as close as possible to try to understand, get as much information we can. But kinds of marking traffic signals. We do look at the geometric conditions of the roadway as well, sight distance, curbs, sidewalks. We look at the items within the right of way or adjacent to our right of way, like bus stops, traffic generators, whether they be PED or vehicle generators. And then just overall, while we're out there, observations of how road users are actually using the facility. And as I mentioned, we try to conduct those reviews as close as possible to the date of the crash. So generally within 2 weeks, a lot of times it's within that same week. The results of the review are used to identify any opportunities to make infrastructure improvements. And in some cases, it's helped us identify maintenance items that we need to address as well. So just going into the process, first and foremost, the notification. In a lot of the metro areas, SHA forces may be involved in traffic incident management and these unfortunate tragedies when they occur. So we become aware of that. In some of the rural counties where maybe SHA forces aren't as involved, we may not always be aware. So we partner with our colleagues, Maryland State Police. So we get a daily feed, which provides us any fatal crash that occurred throughout the state, and that is broken into the SHA SHA geographical districts, which we have 7 of those. So those reports come in at 6 a.m. And that report have helped us identify and be notified when these events happen. So once the district office receives that, they schedule to do the field inspection. That is typically done by the traffic engineers in the district office. And then once they go to the site, they take photos, they examine all the traffic control devices, the features I previously identified. They're provided a uniform questionnaire that's used throughout the state so that each review is done consistently throughout the state. And once that's all completed, that's submitted to either the district engineer or the assistant district engineer for review. Once the district engineer is good with that, it's submitted to the centralized Office of Traffic Safety, where we also conduct a cursory review just to make sure we all the information's there and all the critical elements are part of the report. And if we have any questions, finally, once it's approved at the Office of Traffic and Safety, it's published on the website, and I have a snapshot of what it looks like on the map. And those updates happen every night. So consideration during our reviews, first and foremost, each tragedy is unique where it happens. So we go out there with that lens. You may not expect the decades. Others happen on arterial suburban areas. So keeping that context is important when reviewing from an infrastructure standpoint. And then focusing on all road users. These are focused on vulnerable road users. However, the interaction typically is with motorists. So trying to understand from the perspective, what drove the pedestrian to cross there? Why did the motorist not react? Try to look at it from an infrastructure lens. Was it a lighting condition? Was there a lack of a pedestrian facility? So just trying to look at these through the lens of all road users. And then, although it is a infrastructure focused review, we have to keep the safe systems approach in mind. In some cases, when we've conducted the reviews, we haven't necessarily identified a deficiency or an improvement from an infrastructure. Considered or perceived outside the engineering realm. So those are just the three big things that we use when we consider those, when we perform these reviews. And I'll pause there if there are any questions.
There haven't been too many questions on the chat yet, so we can probably move into a look at the 4 crashes. I think Anna's going to pull them up on the screen. I do want to mention, since you mentioned the safe system approach, Senator, that was a good opportunity. It's a good segue. It's a good opportunity because if you follow traffic safety, and we do have a good number of attendees here, I'm not sure how many people know about 3 E's, 4 E's of highway safety, which are always education, engineering, enforcement, emergency medical services. That kind of evolved with US DOT putting out their roadway strategy, which is a safe system approach. The Maryland Strategic Highway Plan, for at least the last 2 versions, has followed a safe system approach. It's a comprehensive collaborative method of working towards highway safety where data and engineering and both of those are incorporated into every program area that when we take a look at highway safety problems and identify what problems we have on the roadways. So the next version of the SHSP will just build on top of that. We don't have to change gears for how we've been working all along. Just based on the nomenclature that US DOT has used with their safety strategy. So we're in pretty good shape as we work on redevelopment.
All right, so I think at this time we'll walk through 4 reviews, and this law passed in October of 22. And at that time, we SHS. So the crashes that we first started reporting are from April 23. And so these 4 that we'll go over today are from that April of 2023.
They're from 20. We started 24. So
I'm sorry.
We're starting with the enactment of the bill. So
okay, April
crashes that will be reviewed by October 1st this year.
Okay, so the first crash occurred on Maryland 151 in Dundalk. This occurred late at night on Maryland 151. It was in context zone C. For those who may not know, that is a suburban activity center. It's kind of a mixed transition zone there. Those who are not familiar with Dundalk, as you, I guess, head west. Industry, and then you start to transition into more of a suburban neighborhood feel. So this crash actually occurred at an intersection, and like I said, it was late at night, and someone crossing the road, the motorist did not see. So a couple things that we did observe from this crash is there aren't any dedicated So you can see the history of where pedestrians have been walking repeatedly. And the closest crosswalk was about 1,000 feet away. So this is one that we're going to continue to monitor to see what additional improvements that we can make moving forward.
What was the street?
Yes.
I was gonna ask what street was the, sounds like you're gonna.
Yeah, so as I was mentioning, on one side of the road, you have the residential, and the other side is kind of the industrial. Unfortunately, a pedestrian was trying to cross. It was late at night. There's not a lot of lighting in this corridor. And it ended in a fatality. Okay, so this one also was in Baltimore County in the Middle River area. This was at a signalized intersection in Maryland 150 at Kingston. And this crash, a pedestrian was trying to cross. There is, what we observed is there is a transit stop on the north side of the intersection. So the pedestrian was trying to cross from south to north when a vehicle struck westbound vehicle. So when the field review occurred, there were some things that we identified from an infrastructure standpoint. One of those was that the actual push button on the east lane was not functioning. The pedestrian was crossing the that we found. So that was addressed. And then we also took the time to make sure the crosswalk markings were refreshed, that they had some age, they weren't in the best of shape. So that was addressed as well. But all the other factors, the lighting was in place. But this is one where this has been a previous high crash location from a vehicle standpoint. But there is a transit stop there that people frequently use in the mornings in particular.
So anyone who the process used to analyze the crash, it might be helpful for us to understand the use to determine whether additional action is taken. Like in that one, somebody was not functioning.
So for this particular one, we look
Which is the overall too.
Yeah, so overall, I guess we look at it from what's reasonable with a pedestrian. In this particular case, the crossing facilities were there. And after discussing a little bit more with police, it was determined that the pedestrian didn't cross when they were trying to. They weren't cross when they were able to. In other words, they didn't have the walk signal. So what we're looking, we made sure all of our pedestrian buttons were functional. Because if you get frustrated and they don't work, then maybe you could make a bad decision. But in other cases, like if there's a long distance in between crosswalks with no opportunity to safely cross, those are things we consider as well. Like, this is a quarter mile in between crossings. Does this make sense to put something in the middle to provide a vulnerable road user an opportunity to safely cross?
So the first one, there wasn't a crosswalk, but it looked like people were crossing there. So on something like that, how would you figure out if it would make sense?
Yeah, so the district's following up on that to determine if there's currently no crosswalks running along the sidewalk. So in addition to the crosswalks, looking at to be installed sidewalks in that corridor as well.
And just big picture too, we talked about pedestrian safety action plan. So those are corridors with the highest volume of these types of vulnerable road user fatalities. There are other locations like with the Maryland 151 corridor, that's probably much lower on the list in terms of the quantity that's occurred over time. So our PSAT program does have sidewalk installations. It does have mid-block crossings, hawk signals, those countermeasures that we are using systemically through the corridors. But our highway safety improvement program funding is limited for federal highway to about 40 million a year. We do have to share that with a number of safety features statewide. So things like rumble strips for roadway departures, high friction pavement for area where we've had a lot of rear end crashes and other things that have led to fatalities. So we disperse that. So where does it land us? We got about 100 million total in the 6-year CDP to deal with those, adding the connections that aren't there today, filling in the gaps on missing sidewalks, et cetera. But that the way that we're working the program is every year we're going to keep more and more of these projects building and growing, dealing with them corridor at a time, using spot improvements where we can. But certainly we can't put a sidewalk everywhere. It's just, there's not the funding to support that. So we do have to prioritize. And right now, again, the highway safety, the strategic highway safety plan, the vulnerable road user report, the PSAT plan, those are kind of the critical tools that we leverage to help guide us on where to make those bigger investments.
Okay, so one more in Baltimore County. This is in Perry Hall community, just north of Joppa Road on US 1. This was a case of another mid-block crossing. This occurred during that transition from daylight to dark in late spring and May. And so this also occurred 1,500 feet from the signalized crossing. So this is another case where the district, there are sidewalks present in this corridor. The district's continuing to monitor this situation. We didn't necessarily find anything out of sorts, but there does seem to be maybe some. So this, yeah, so if you can see here, there's a two-way left turn lane in the center that people use to try to make a two-stage gap acceptance. And so that adds width. One of the things that we can look at in the future is possibly reducing the width, adding medians to try to calm traffic, and then providing a refuge in addition to some more frequent crossings. We did add a new signal at Klausmeyer Road, which is not far north from here recently, but there still is about a 1,500-foot gap from the closest crossing.
Just like the analysis, we've assumed that this is a one-off issue, or is this an area which we're crossing on a semi-regular basis?
So this, to Will's point, this particular segment hasn't really been flagged as a. But as you can see, there's opportunity. There's neighborhoods on both sides. There's generators just to the south of Joppa. Development, shopping. So there is, and quite frankly, I don't live far from here. People do exercise, jog. So there is a decent amount of pedestrian activity.
But just understand cost and limitation and also be to spend money where we're able. But like looking at a facility like that, the wide turn median. Maybe that's sort of pedestrian zone. Would you look at using like flex space or any other types of items to visually think about, shrinking the space, slowing the cars, also creating that refuge in the middle?
Yes. Yeah, that's like two scales of projects. So the Complete Streets Leadership Academy project that we did in Howard County did that. It sort of infringes on the motorist space to calms the traffic just by making you feel like you're in a tighter area. That often corresponds with speed reductions, speed enforcement in counties that permit that, and the full range of options there. Additionally, we just did the ribbon cutting, our US 1 Phase 1 project in College Park. The cross section of the roadway there was very similar, sidewalks on both sides, reversible lane in the center. There we took out the reversible lane, put in a median, put in landscaping, definitively created bike lanes, made narrower lanes, dropped the speed limit, all of those types of traffic calming measures. And again, some of that's based on the context of how well those things will work. I do think some of those Beach Streets Leadership Academy quick build tools will help us to do low dollar improvements like flex posts. Right now, we're looking at that in Greenbelt and a few other locations. Even those we haven't really done is
I think there's one more. So the last one that we'll discuss today, this happened out in Frederick County. This was on an interstate. And this is a case where vehicle, it appears that there was something either wrong with the vehicle or but a pedestrian was outside the vehicle and was struck by a passing motorist. So this is one that we didn't really find much from an infrastructure, but it ties into some of those other strategies like move over, just outreach on, this unfortunately, this type of crash we've seen a lot on our interstates, and what else we can do to try to address it. I know there are technology options. I know in our 95 project, we're adding cameras to be able to detect the situation. Hopefully that'll help our teams be able to maybe respond, provide that management, but we won't have that in every situation yet across the state. So I think there's definitely still opportunities to get better compliance with the move over law, and definitely educating the public on what to do when they encounter these situations.
Yeah, there's certain limitations on roadway signage from the federal government, but because we have tried to message this one, but on roads where we've seen a lot of, out of vehicle. Is there some signage that other states have done that we can write down the highways and then thinking about it more? At least you see it every day and you're traveling down that. That's something we can maybe look at for the future. Because it just feels like getting into the message in that moment is tough, right? We put it out generally, but until you're in that crisis situation, and then people panic, they get scared, right? I was on 95 with a tire blown, and it was scary. There were vehicles going incredibly fast right by me. And so even though I know everything to do, I still initially had that bit of panic, right? I get it, but people feel. So I'm just wondering if there's a way to get it to them where they need it. I know we have great for messaging on the roads, but maybe something about staying in the car or, what to do in emergency. I don't know.
There are definitely pedestrian prohibited signs for access controlled highways.
I don't think people think of themselves.
That's exactly. So we can look into see if there's some, even if it's not signing, what other educational things we can do, guidance through social media and other platforms to talk about what to do. Yeah, get a flag. We put out messaging encouraging folks to do the pound 77 to get us. We have all the best assistance and much of the state with our chart program, but not everyone wants to wait. So
Well, we did look at that one a little more because we were wondering why he would want to, that was not according to the law, that was not associated with the disabled vehicle.
Oh.
But we see that a lot on the,
Oh, you see
this is
it.
one I can relate to on the MDT.
And that's one that when we talk about pedestrian crashes a lot, we talk about the crashes happen, fatalities happen where motorists don't expect them to be. So when you don't see flashing lights or you don't see a disabled vehicle on the side of the road, there's just a pedestrian suddenly there. Yeah.
If you look at our website, there are a lot of dots on interstate highways.
Yeah.
And some of those are people actually walking and see it with everything.
All right, so we, like I said, we just wanted to take a crack at a handful of fatality infrastructure reviews because we will be reviewing all the ones that were completed since October 1st. So we'll have some more for the next meeting. We'll be
and then those ones Mr. Office work on in future meetings. You could update us on them that way. I know there's things you're considering and it all takes time and money, obviously. As well, but it'd be just great to know that, you know, if it's deemed warranted.
Yeah, absolutely. As part of the Complete Streets policy, that's where that really comes into play. We're doing resurfacing projects. We will look at restriping at that point to narrow the lanes to provide in the right context zones. We're not going to do that on the interstate highway, but in the right zones to provide the priority to the pedestrians, to the bicycles, to promote slower speeds, to promote safety. That's what the policy is driving at, and it does get kind of complicated. I just actually had a meeting with some elected officials last week to talk about a route where get into sidewalks, you get into utility relocations, you get into signal reconstruction to add the pedestrian crossings. It goes from a resurfacing to a major project pretty quickly. So we're going to try to balance that and kind of make sure we're on the same page as we work through the guidance.
And as we do the reviews, they go through, before they even get to this meeting, they've gone through several sets of eyes and several folks have taken a look at it. So we're just kind of taking a look at them for the last time and, you know, accepting them as they've been submitted unless something comes up that we identify during the case review. So that falls in.
And sorry to jump in here again, but you know, understanding we have financial constraints, right? We all feel that, but I think, you know, any and all opportunities, I think in the future, like lower cost countermeasures and what was used or why wasn't used, I think would be also valuable just to can't do it everywhere. Challenges hotspots. So having a response is also valuable. As a community wants to look at it, cost effective as well.
Yeah, and I hate to go back to the funding repeatedly, but with the Complete Streets Leadership Academy, we do have the goal of having a 2025 round. We did the first three. My understanding is we've got a lot of interest in it now. And so there's a very, very large volume of projects that will be considered out of that. So maybe some of this process could help inform the selection of those. Absolutely. But we're considering those within the prioritization and funding process.
We've left you plenty.
I know. I have more than 3 minutes.
So several years ago now, the secretary had asked local jurisdictions to start to develop. The state has a strategic highway safety plan, but we have to be very broad just because we're looking at the whole state. So we can't get into the nitty gritty of specific groups we want to take a look at necessarily, but local jurisdictions can. So for the past several administrations, the secretaries have asked local jurisdictions to develop local roadway safety plans or their own strategic highway safety plans. And there has been a lot of progress since that first request. And so much so that we have a project with Baltimore Metropolitan Council that kind of helps the local jurisdictions to put these plans together and then evaluate them once they're done. So we have an update on where we stand with the local projects.
Okay, we'll see. Planning organization for the Baltimore region. So this is our catchment area here, I guess you could say in beige. We have partner agencies out west on the Eastern Shore. There's a larger one down in the DC area that covers District of Columbia as well as parts of Northern Virginia. So it's based on census population and everything, but we are federally mandated planning organizations. One of our tasks, one of our things to do is safety, and we have the Baltimore Regional Transportation Board that governs a lot of our work with planners and engineers and a lot of different disciplines in our office that work on different quality of life issues, air quality, water quality, but huge contingent for transportation. So this is just a throwback to the past strategic highway safety plans in the state. We've had many more even before that, but this kind of dovetails, but gives you the image of what Dr. Kearns was saying earlier about how we have data as the foundation. On the bottom of the image on the right there, we have those 4 E's he mentioned in yellow, and then these are our past emphasis areas. As he said, we're going to be redoing coming up. Local one, we've talked about doing local ones, and they've realized that everybody has different issues and everybody knows their areas more specifically than a state panel would. So you have your mountainous areas out west, you have your shore, your eastern shore, and you have Baltimore City and areas around Washington, D.C. that are highly urban and dense. And then you know, Maryland's just a very diverse state. So there isn't a one size fits all. While they do a great job with it, and it covers a lot of the major issues like we heard from today with speeding, distraction, impaired pedestrians and bicyclists, there are also some other concerns when you really drill down. So the position at BMC, and what we've been trying to do is we were working within that network of engineers and planners that we already have at the local level, because our whole mission is to support, be a resource for our local partners, and then also bring in this highway safety side that brings in law enforcement and EMS and those types of partners to try to work together, build these multidisciplinary teams and have them build their own plan. Some of them did it from the top down. They had bosses say, we're going to do this, go get together and do this. Other ones had people more so on the worker level get together, because we all see each other all the time anyway, especially first responders. They're always out there together and say, let's get something organized and together. And then the bosses love it because it's a strategic plan. So the setup that we had starting 6 years ago, mechanism. Highway Safety Office, we heard from folks earlier today, they provide funding for educational outreach and law enforcement activities. The Highway Safety Improvement Program, we heard from State Highway Administration with their infrastructure opportunities. There's a whole section of the Highway Safety Improvement Program that's earmarked just for local projects on local roads. And then also if there's a way for them to get within their own jurisdictions, legislative or budgetary processes, having a well thought out strategic plan. So we wanted it to be beneficial for all aspects of them on the ground. So when we started out, this is what we had. This was just standard strategic planning. You have goals, emphasis areas, strategies, all of that modeling after the state plan that's been around. And one thing was we really wanted executive support. It was important for county councils, county commissioners, city mayors, whatever it may be, to endorse these plans. And then the federal government came out 3 years ago with the current transportation bill with the program called Safe Streets and Roads for All. That's the SS4A on there. And this was agencies. Regional, it did not go through MDOT, it did not go through state agencies. This funding was meant to encourage building of these plans, or if you have those plans, to help you implement your projects, quick builds, whatever they may be. So this is their list of what they want in a strategic safety plan. So we went through and we realized that we had already checked off several of the boxes when it came to this. We didn't have as much public engagement and equity data in the plans as in the region that we wanted, and some of the other folks outside the Baltimore region. But we had several plans that would qualify for the bigger pots of money coming from the US DOT. So when this came out, it was great. Our folks had a leg up on it because Maryland had the forethought years before that to do this. So I'm just real quick going to go through the 7 jurisdictions in our Baltimore region. So Anne Arundel County does have a Vision Zero plan. All of these plans, by the way, are available on the Zero Desk website. So you can always go in and look at your county's plan or your city's plan. So they've had one for a couple of years now. They are using the safe system approach. All of these committees, like I said, they have EMS, fire department, police, engineers, health departments, planners, everybody that touches on traffic safety. They have some data dashboards to support their plan. And what you see on the bottom there are the 3 rounds so far of that SS4A funding that's become available, and they've won awards each year. So you can see they brought in about $1.3 million into the county in Annapolis, just from that source. Baltimore City has a plan endorsed by the mayor a couple of years ago. Theirs is very focused on infrastructure and engineering upgrades to protect vulnerable road users, because it is such a dense urban area and there's a lot of folks walking and biking or scooters or whatever it may be. They have a really, really solid base there in their Department of Transportation, and you can see they've actually been awarded over $10 million, almost $11 million over the years. On issues in the city. Baltimore County's had one since 2021, and they are updating theirs at the moment. They have a consultant helping with that, and they have a data dashboard, and they were able to secure $3.5 million to support those efforts. Carroll County, their Board of County Commissioners is their governing body. They have a great plan. They have young drivers as a focus area in their plan, which is a target area or target group in the state plan, but in Carroll County, it rose up to of high importance. So they've actually been working together to get out coordinated media outreach through each of the different types of agencies, information officers, and they're actually implementing a program the highway safety offices use called Impact Teen Drivers in all public high schools. And right now they're in 2 grades, and they're going to hopefully expand in the coming years. So Sykesville within the county did get some SS4A funds to build their own municipal level plan, but the county progress. Harper County actually started a long time ago, even before all of these discussions. Back in 2013, they had county legislation to create a traffic safety advisory board, which has a very long roster of partners, and it's very diverse. And part of what they do is their local SHSP. They have a big school bus camera program, and they're doing a lot of things because they have more urban, suburban areas and then a lot of rural areas. So they're working together. Their state and local engineers are very close. And we heard about one of the Complete Streets Academy projects was in the town of Bel Air. They also, the towns of Bel Air, Aberdeen, and Haverty Grace actually were awarded that federal funding there, that $140,000, to work together to build municipal level safety plans. So they've got a lot of different levels to their safety strategies. Howard County, they've had a plan. Oh, it's been 4 years. Yes, they have a really great group down there too, working on it. They have really great work between the fire and EMS agencies and the schools, and they have very safety-minded county level legislators, because they actually had a law passed 2 years ago, I believe it was 2, yeah, to mimic what the state does, what Cedric just walked us through, to go out and do an infrastructure review, but they are doing it of all fatal crashes on their local roads and a crash where a non-motorist was seriously injured. So that's been going on for a while, and those are also posted on their website. If you have any interest, we can get you guys the link so you can read their reviews, which are similar to what Cedric just walked us through. They got almost $500,000. They've been doing a lot of work in different parts of Route 1 with the Complete Streets Academy as well as Safe Streets funding. Queen Anne's they're getting a consultant on board to build their safety plan. We started out with them and they were doing great, and then we had a lot of stuff with the bridge and all of the Bay Bridge. What's the actual term? The Bay Bridge study or the new Bay Bridge?
Tier 2.
Tier 2 study, yes.
Bay Crossing study.
The Bay Crossing study, that's what it is. So obviously that took up a lot of time out of their folks' time, but they're getting safety in all those discussions. So I see it as a win-win. And then just to expand a little bit, so through this partnership, started out with BMC, it's been expanded into those other MPOs out in Western and Southern Maryland. We have a lot of communication and collaboration with that. The director of the Western Maryland MPO did a Complete Streets Academy project and works very closely with the state. We have some resources up online about doing local plans and also about the safe system approach, either on the Baltimore Metropolitan Council site or the Zero Deaths Maryland. This is, I believe there might be a couple more beyond this, but this is as of August, where you can see, like Dr. Kern said, there's been a lot of whatever that level. Most of them are counties. And you have Baltimore City and the city of Salisbury. The ones in blue are in some stage. They brought together a committee and are working through the process. And the ones in red have expressed some type of interest or been awarded the Safe Streets and Roads for All funding to build a plan. So we're getting out there far and wide. And I believe you have a grantee out Western Maryland, right, working on those. We just haven't filled in in Allegheny. They're just in process, but they should be almost.
I think they're done.
They might be done. Yeah. Like I said, the other idea for local safety plans, aside from it being beneficial on a lot of levels for all of us that live in the state, it's also for this extra funding. I'm sorry, before I get to that. So at BMC, we have developed some crash data dashboards. These are just to get some extra pieces out there to support our local safety plans. Some of the metrics they're tracking in their plans, we have up on our dashboards. The state is developing more dashboards. They obviously have the fatal crash dashboard that would be well. So this is that Safe Streets and Roads for All funding. And I'm just going to go through this real quickly. This is just the Maryland awards, but in the first year funding, we got $2.3 million across the state. In the second round of funding in 2023, you can see the list grew. It's now 3 pages long, and we got 18.6 million in the state. And this most recent year, across the state, we were back to only about 4 million, but that's because in the previous year, we got a lot of project money to go out and do those quick build projects, and they cost a lot more. As Will said, the funding so that is my information, and if I've missed anything or said anything, okay. I will turn it over to you guys to speak about the other parts of the state, because to give the local SHSP perspective, there's really strong programs down in Prince George's and Montgomery County. They've had them for many years with their Vision Zero plans, and in Frederick, I can't speak directly to them, but you may want to.
No, we don't have anything to add to it, but other than that, there are strong plans across the state that they do keep revising and they keep updating them to keep them current. And like I said earlier, the local plans are more able to be they can work more closely with their constituents and their populations. So they can be more flexible, they can be more specific than we can at the state level. I mean, anybody that wants to develop their plan is welcome to model theirs off of ours, but ours is very broad by necessity.
And most of them, I would say probably the majority, are probably trying to stay on the state timeline. So you may be hearing things in the next year, even on your local level. And I had suggested to Cedric that you guys can encourage your locals to go get this local funding from Safe Streets and Roads for All and say, we'll support you. You can do it on our state road and that can help with your time.
And we did just get notified that the next round of funding is going to open up, the funding is available. And they are encouraging EMS applications as well to look at post-crash care. Post-crash care is a component of the safe system approach that, as Cedric mentioned earlier, and it's something that they are very interested in funding, especially planning of being able to use different types of technology and making sure that they can get the patients to the definitive care they need should there be a crash.
One other cool thing about this Safe Streets and Roads for All funding, it was in the transportation bill, so it was 5 years, $1 billion a year. They have not awarded all $1 billion every year, so there's rollover money. I believe we have about $2.5 billion left for the remaining 2 years or something like that. And it can cover any kind of idea. It can do quick build infrastructure, it can do planning for the local plans, technology for EMS or law enforcement. They're looking for new and different ideas to try to tackle the safety problem. As we heard, the whole country is the same as Maryland. We're a problem time. So the federal government's open to all kinds of new ideas. So if you guys are out there making plans or doing things, this might be something to look into. And yeah, we'll open up in the spring.
And our next pedestrian bicycle emphasis area, which is in a week, we have Prince George's. So I'm very interested to hear, how the profession. Yep.
And before we get to, we do have a couple questions that we'll get to. I want to mention, I said earlier on that the SHSP will be developing the 26 to 30 SHSP. There will be a large work group meeting on April 15th. We'll post all this information on the zero-md.gov website so everybody can kind of see the calendar. But also during the first quarter of 2025, we'll be having regional meetings. We are interested in getting the public's input into highway safety problems that they see in their areas and suggested solutions that they may have for us so we can incorporate into the plan. So we will be getting to all areas of the state. So we'll have those dates up as well. There will be a virtual component to it, but we will have the meetings in person. So if the meeting is out west or down the shore, we'll be there with the venue, but we'll also have a way for people to do that. There were a couple of comments about looking at.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
On the strategic highway safety plan, I actually met with a constituent the other day who was asking if they can volunteer to be on.
Yes.
Contributing group.
Yes, they can.
Where would we tell people to go to do that?
We'll give you the website so they can go put their contact information in. So
All the emphasis area.
or pedestrian or speeding, or they can join and then they'll automatically be part of the conversation development.
And I think Vicky. Oh, there you go.
There we go.
I think the thing to mention too, in addition to volunteering, if there are communities that would like to take the messaging that's put out by the Highway Safety Office, we have a distribution list and sends those social media and images and everything too. So likewise, folks can let us know and they can get on the distribution list. So like community associations, we want to get out in newsletters and that.
That's a monthly toolkit.
This was a gentleman you might remember from Baltimore County, CDP. Really on point with this community. He knew about this process and wanted to get involved and just didn't have it. So.
So we just showed the website up there. So that's where to get all the information. That's to see where all our strategic highway safety plans are listed. A couple folks about on the chat talk about programs that they have in other places. Two in particular that were mentioned, the Pace Car program is really a community-based program because it gets community members to put notices on their car. It puts a magnetic sticker on their car that says they're part of the Pace Car program and they follow the rules of the road. And it's better when everybody knows that project is going on. It kind of loses its if you're doing it at a state level, everybody doesn't know what that is. So when you have a small community that's doing it in a town or a small city, that's where we've seen them in other parts of the country. And there's a couple different programs out there. I think New England has a couple of Pace Car programs, but they are usually centered around a small town or community. The other one was the SNAP program. That's a European. It's in Wales. It lets folks take pictures and video of folks who are violating highway safety laws. That would need a lot more embracing by probably the legislature and the communities around to be able to do that, because the way that the laws are written, the law enforcement needs to observe the violation. So that's where we would be with that one. But they do some of the programs that do work with this document. National Highway Traffic Safety Administration has produced. It's called Countermeasures That Work. They're on their 11th edition. They list all the research backed programs that we use for highway safety. Typically, our programs that we put in have to be in that book, or we have to have some data that shows they could be effective with the programs. So we also work very closely with Transportation Research Board and the Governor's Highway Safety Association to conduct research and take some money to put towards these programs. So when we have ideas, we can kind of create literature to show that they work and are effective. So that's one way that we can add to countermeasures that work. One of the questions is for SHA. Is it possible to equip work crews with signage, both electronic and print, that read move over? A lot of the signs up, especially for like mowing crews or trash pickup, it tells you they're there, but it doesn't tell drivers to move over. So they were asking if that's something that could.
Sure. So going back to the 4 E's discussion, we've been partnering with local enforcement agencies to issue citations. They partner right alongside with us to go out. We recently with Carroll County and Howard County we'll do a litter operation that we're cleaning up the road. They can stage just downstream of us and watch and see if a vehicle moved over or not, and nail people with citations. That's been a very successful program, and we already have more of these planned, and have been educating our local shops about how that process can work with their local sheriff's office and other agencies. So we've also taken that and boosted that on social media to create awareness around the enforcement, along with the law enforcement agencies doing that as well. Additionally, we predict more at the root of the question. As part of the safety recommendations, we're updating our traffic control standards. I don't actually know if standardizing move over signage and electronic signs is part of that, but we appreciate the question and the feedback, and we'll absolutely take that back to the team that's working on that to see where there are opportunities to incorporate that. And also kind of consistent with what Chrissy said earlier, that as we're looking at these infrastructure reviews, we can look at those access controlled highways, the I-70s, et cetera, to see if there's move over law messaging, signing that we could put out to help folks be more aware of that statewide, and particularly areas where that's an issue. That's
the majority of the comments that we have that came through online. There are some others that we will use to kind of build the program for the upcoming meetings, so we can take those into account. We take a look at that. We a whole semester of Highway Safety 101 into about an hour and a half. So there was a flood of information. If any of the folks online have suggestions for what they would like to see in future meetings, these meetings will be held quarterly, so we can adapt the topics. We want to make sure that we are identifying areas that we can make the biggest difference in improving highway safety and provide that feedback to both the administration and the legislature, so they can, kind of help us work hand in hand with what we need to keep the folks using all of our roadways safe. That's all we have for today, but we've mentioned our website a lot. That's where all the information is. Our next meeting will be scheduled for March of 2025. So if you have any suggestions, there are ways on the website where you found the meeting notice to be able to contact us. You can submit suggestions for topics that we discuss. Just give us plenty of time to put the presentation together. But we'll be happy to address any of the topics that you'd like to see. We hope we have lots of participation for the SHSP because it is a plan for the whole state. So we want to make sure that we are addressing everybody's needs as we put it together. And if there's nothing else.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. I appreciate it and appreciate everybody's contributions. It's clear lots of work is going on, right? And I think sometimes it's about making the connection and what folks aren't aware of and how maybe one program area can help another program. I know we're all striving for the same thing and we all get frustrated by seeing fatalities and injuries on the roadways. So we can continue to drive the numbers down and hopefully reach our goals. So thanks everybody. And since we won't see you through the holiday season, likely, do we want to mention Maryland Remembers? I think that would be great to make sure everybody is aware of that.
We can do that. Maryland Remembers is a event that we've hosted annually. Previously, it was focused on families of those who lost somebody as a result of an impaired driving crash. But last year and continuing to this year, we want to make sure that we honor and remember those who lost their lives on Maryland's roadways, regardless of the reason behind the crash. So as you can see on the website, the event will be on December 16th. It's in Annapolis. The information is there if you are interested in attending. Again, there is a way to sign up on our website that you can let us know you're coming. We do provide some, hors d'oeuvres for the attendees. So we do like to have an accurate head count, but we encourage you to attend. If you or somebody you know has lost a loved one as a result of a motor vehicle crash, you can we'll be there as well. So we'll be happy to have you in attendance.
Thank you, Tim. It's always a wonderful event, very heartwarming and touching to meet the families of many who now are part of our family, I feel like, because well, but to recognize that pain is still very real, regardless of how long ago that crash occurred. It's an important reminder, I think, for everybody and why we do what we do every day. But I think a great message too to get out to the general public. So we'd love having as many people as possible attend. Hope to see you there. If not, everybody be safe and we'll see you soon. Thank you.